Good evening.
Hi. Can hear you.
Do you hear me well now?
Yes,
Now,
Good. How about now? Better?
good.
How's the lighting? We got a new light. Somebody gave us a new light. Are we dark or light?
sort of soft lighting.
So it's good?
We see you fine.
Change it even better.
Oh, that's brighter.
That's weird. Okay, we're really gonna do hard stuff tonight.
Hmm.
Just gets complicated or abstract, not complicated. How are you, Arthur? You're on mute.
Thank you for asking. I'm fine. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Supposed to be 50 degrees tomorrow.
They said that the other day and it wasn't. Still feels cold.
That's in your bones, old man.
Yeah, no kidding. Every year it gets to me a little bit more. Is it supposed to snow next week? No.
Well, I have my video off because I'm lying on 2 heating pads.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's par for the course.
Ooh, look.
Is it supposed to snow? I think it's bright. Is there a way to tilt it down so it's not so, no?
I mean, what do you mean?
It's, this new light is like shining.
But that's the way it needs to be. So you think people could see you.
All right, Albert. Hi. Oh, hi, Leora. Okay, so thank you for the light. We can't, I'm blinded, but I hope that we look
That's the way
better.
it works.
You can actually see your faces. That's good.
Is it
Isn't that
good?
a Bruce
Yeah.
How it
Springsteen?
looks.
Isn't that a Bruce Springsteen song?
How about this? It changes. It's
I'm
different.
sorry.
What's better?
Bobby.
This or that?
Well, it's better when you can see Esther and not you.
I feel like we're supposed to be talking about like, so our skincare routine.
No, you're just supposed to be telling the news, but I'm sure it's not very happy.
No, we're not going to tell the news. Anyway, the news is that God's in charge. That's all.
Do you guys hear us well also? Because we also have this like microphone. People are getting microphones.
Oh, here's Roz.
Next, we have to get you a green screen.
Yeah.
We want makeup art, hair and makeup.
Right, right,
I want a caterer for my trailer.
right. A trailer, right.
I want my own trailer. I don't want to share.
I want something that goes to 11. A speaker that goes to 11, not 10, 11.
All right.
All right, let's wait one more minute and then we'll put it on record. Hello.
Yeah. Where is it?
it is recording. Okay. I guess it was been recording the whole time. There we go. I'm glad.
Oh,
I'm
so
glad we
for all
behaved,
my
glad
joking
we behaved
around.
ourselves.
Great. Ooh. Okay. So welcome everyone. I guess we can also say good Chodesh. Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov.
Right?
Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov. It's the month of Shvat. And Shvat is my favorite month.
Mine too.
Yeah? How come?
It's new beginnings, and I love trees, so it's about potential
Okay.
and growth.
100%. Beautiful. Beautiful. I have more basic reasons. I'm born in Shvat, so I just have it's my birthday month, and our son Moshe Petalled is his month. But my little vort. Oh, good. I have a whole new audience, so I can say this. That you've heard it for 25 million years, but which is that every nation, each person, you're born with a mazel, what month you're born in, right? So person can be Dagim if they're born in Adar, if you're right. So, but also each nation has a mazal, and the mazal for the Jewish people is the mazal, the sign for Shvat, which is a bucket, a dli. The word is dli. The mazal is dli. And whereas in English, like non-Jewish astrology, it's called the water bearer. According to our astrology, it's the bucket, and it's not the thing that carries, not the person who carries the water, but the actual receptacle. So it's like the Jewish people are truly if water is if the metaphor or analogy for Torah in this world is water, so we are the vessel that holds the water. So anyway, you should all have a beautiful, beautiful Chodesh Shvat, and I don't know, let's make ourselves a vessel.
So that's a good, by the way, that's the whole concept of Dli and these signs and zodiac and stuff like that. It's if you study the daily Rambam for a chapter, the cycle of a chapter a day, he's exactly there, and it's fascinating, and it has to do with what we're studying as well, by the way. Because just to give you a small little understanding of how we have to calculate and have to take into consideration things that really didn't happen, or nobody was there to be able, or it's impossible to perceive different things, but those things need to be taken into consideration in order to understand what's happening around us. I'll give an example what I'm talking about. I'm talking very abstract right now. But for instance, in the very, very exact, very, very scientific, mathematical equations that the Rambam goes through in order to figure out, he's trying to figure out two things at the same time. He's trying to figure out exactly how to calculate when exactly does the moon get born, or what's the cycle of the moon and how long it takes to do its rotation, and the sun. And at the same time, he is also calculating the period, the seasons, which is dependent upon the sun. And the thing is that what's very interesting, in order to figure out, and the reason why in the Jewish calendar, by the way, that needs to happen, and you need to calculate it exactly, is because our months go by the moon, right? But we have to recalibrate every once in a while to make sure that Passover, comes out during the spring season, okay? And that's dependent upon the sun. So there's a lot of calculations, but the only way to do that, believe it or not, I'm going to tell you something astonishing that you also can learn in Gemara. It's Gemara Rosh Hashanah, the Talmud goes into this, is that we have to calculate. It's really weird. When was the world created, so to speak? The world was created the 25th day of Elul, but everything starts from the period of time, the season of Nisan, the Tkufat Nisan. And you have to figure out if the world existed before Elul. You have to go back half a year, but there was no world, but it doesn't make a difference. if the world was created, where would the sun have been? So when the world came into being, the sun was in a certain place and certain things were in a certain place, but we have to calculate as if the world existed a year before, or at least half a year before. And it's so interesting. So the Gemara goes into where the sun would have been, and it talks about it as if it existed, as if the world existed. Where the sun was, the first Kufat Nisan that happened before Elul, but Elul was the 25th day of Elul was when the world was created. So it's very, I was just thinking about this because we're going to get into really abstract concepts right now. Okay, really, you thought it was abstract up till now? Well, here we go. Okay, and all I wanted to say is that just because, and even Rabbi Steinsaltz mentions it over and over again in these next few paragraphs, just because we usually don't consciously experience the things he's going to be talking about doesn't mean they don't exist. Same type of thing with the calculations of the months and this and that. Just because the world didn't exist doesn't mean that's not the way it was and that's not the way it is, and that's what's happening in the world.
The world doesn't exist and nobody hears it, did it?
So it did,
sorry,
according
I'm
to the
kidding.
Gemara is asking exactly. The Gemara is saying exactly that. No one was around. There wasn't even a world, but there was still a sound in the forest. There was still a sun. There was still a moon. There was all the potential. Where would have been? It's fascinating, and it's mind-boggling. And I've been sitting here, Chabad, not the Chabad, but there was a person who put out. It's fascinating. Put out a couple of videos to help with these chapters. And I don't know if any of you are fans of Saturday Night Live, but there was a skit with Chevy Chase when he was impersonating Gerald Ford at a debate. And it was supposed to be a young Diane Sawyer, if I remember correctly, asking him a question about unemployment and asking about a whole bunch of numbers, and you see his face falling and falling and falling. And then he says, it was my impression there would be no math. And that's the way I feel with these chapters in the Rambam. It was like, I became a rabbi for a reason because I didn't do well in math. So all of a sudden, so anyway, same type of thing over here. Let's understand it, let's absorb and plow through it. So much so that this is so abstract, I had to call, my wife called for me, a good friend of ours in Israel. She said, hey, he's going to be up. It was 1:30 in the morning, by the way, there. So it was a few hours ago here, like 2 hours ago. And he was up.
What kind of scholar is asleep at 1:30 in the morning?
And he does the best impression of Rabbi Steinsaltz, by the way, with his voice. So, by the way, I guess he's also trying to.
For any of the original Steinsaltz ambassador people, is anyone on here? It was Uriel Segal. He was
the first ambassador.
All right, so what page are we on?
We are on page 6 in the new version. We're stuck
in this version. We're actually on page 6.
We're on the top. We are. The sentence ends in each person in our world. That's where we got to last week.
Okay, so then it says an angel, however.
Okay. Right.
Ready? Take it away.
Let's go. So, an angel, however, is not merely a fragment of existence doing nothing more than just manifesting an emotion. Okay, because that's what he explained up till now. It is a whole and integral being, conscious of itself and its surroundings, and able to act and create and do things within the framework of the world or formation. Okay, so it's a being. It has consciousness, and it's able to create, and it's able to do things. Now, notice one word that he doesn't have here, that he's going to say in the next paragraph.
Anyone know? Free will, right?
Exactly. He doesn't decide what to do.
So then who's when it says it's creating, so then what do we say?
How do you create without free will? Well, that's why I called up Uriel in Israel, and he said, Shmuel, your father, Olav Shalom, this is exactly what he dealt with. In the physical world, there are a lot of beings, he said, like microbes and the stuff that my father was a bacteriologist, a microbiologist, and they're beings that created or destroys. They create and destroy things, but they don't have free will. They just have a certain consciousness. Let's call it survival.
Is it like angels have angel instincts?
Yes, that's what he said. That's exactly what he said. It's a certain type of, but it's more than that. it depends how you define survival. So God gives it in each one of them a certain survival
It's
means
a
that I
yetzer.
have to express myself in this way.
Like it's a yetzer, and they have to. It's like a toddler who's learning how to pull up. Like they keep doing it over
Right.
and over. They don't actually even want to
Right.
necessarily. They just are like they have
Right.
an instinct, a drive to.
And you can't explain, right. So each angel has an instinct to do different things.
Everyone, please jump in with questions or comments. Okay.
Well, I really want to get through like 3 paragraphs tonight. So let's see okay?
Still jump
Because
in.
we're definitely not going to understand each word.
All right.
Okay. The nature of an angel is to be, to a degree, as its name in Hebrew signifies, a messenger. Malach also means in Hebrew, pshat, simple meaning of the word, is a messenger. To constitute a permanent contact between our world of action and the higher worlds. That's all it's doing. It's transmitting information. Uriel used the word, he said, try to teach the class the concept of transmitters of information, transmitters of Meidah, right? They just transmitters, okay? They're transmitting information, and they do it each in its own way, okay? The angel is the one who affects transfers of the vital plenty between worlds. An angel's missions go in 2 directions. It may serve as an emissary of God downward, to other angels and to worlds and creatures below the world of formation. And it may also serve as the one who carries things upwards from below, from our world to the higher worlds. Okay, that's understood. Angels from, and by the way, where do we learn this out from? Pshat, 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 simple meaning of the text in the Torah. Where do we see this? Jacob's ladder.
Am I gonna have to start calling on people? Kelly, where do we see it?
Jacob's ladder. The angel's going from down below to up above, and up above to down below, and that's what he's seeing. That's what he's
They're
seeing.
like mules.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're sophisticated transmitters of experience, knowledge, and in these types of angels, certain compressed, one-dimensional titrations of emotions and intention. It was good. Uriel said, don't use the word intention, use the word intentionality.
Ooh.
He said, there's a difference over here, and we're going to get to that difference a little bit, because he says, especially religious from people get too caught up with intention, and that's how they translate the word kavana. He says it's more than intention; it's intentionality. Intentionality, which is a little bit of a different, more focused, more concentrated. But we'll get to that very soon. Our Bishtanzas will go into that, because actually I had a problem with what he was saying, and I asked Uriel this question, and he kind of answered it for me. But we'll get to there. But just note that point, that they are transmitters of information. Okay, let's go on. The real difference between man and angel is not the fact that man has a body, because the essential comparison is between the human soul and the angel. I mentioned this last time, by the way. The soul of man is most complex. This is going to be the difference between the soul of man and the angel. The soul of man is most complex and includes a whole world of different existential elements of all kinds, while the angel is a being of single essence, and therefore, in a sense, one-dimensional. In addition, man, because of his many-sidedness, his capacity to contain contradictions, and his gift of an inner, we hope, right? You know, in our day and age, it's seemingly that people are less and less.
We're forgetting that element of our humanity.
That we actually are able to contain contradictions inside of ourselves and not become one thing or another. But anyway, and his gift of an inner power of soul, that divine spark that makes him man, has the capacity to distinguish between one thing and another, especially between good and evil. It is this capacity which makes it possible for him to rise to great heights, and by the same token creates a possibility for his failure and backsliding, neither of which is true for the angel. From the point of view of its essence, the angel is eternally the same at its essence. It could take, he'll explain over here, it could take different manifestations, but at its essence, it can't break free from its core being. It can't change. It can't transform. It is static, an unchanging existence, whether temporary or eternal, fixed within the rigid limits of quality given at its very creation. Whenever it was created, and we're going to see there's different types of different points of creation of different types of angels. Okay, But at the point of creation, the core element of what it's made up of, it can't break free from that, which is not the same situation as man, which is the only being in the world that has this type of soul, this type of life source that gives it the ability to be multifaceted. Okay. Now we'll go on. Among the many thousands of angels to be found in the various worlds are those that have existed from the very beginning of time, for they are an unaltering part of the eternal being and the fixed order of the universe, such as the ones we know of, the big ones, so to speak. Michael, Gavriel, Raphael. I don't know if you guys remember, we mentioned those names explicitly, especially on the days of awe, especially during the Elah. Which, by the way, we could talk about how Hasidic literature explains how each one of the prayers that we have, especially on Yom Kippur, corresponds to an ascent to the next world after it. Okay, how is that possible? How many prayers are there on Yom Kippur? How many times do we pray? 5 times. Very good. 5 times, right? Right? 5 times. It corresponds basically also to the 5 times that the high priest changes his clothes. Each time twice, which equals 10, but it doesn't make a difference. So how is that true with what I just said? How is that possible with what I just said if we just explained over and over again that there are 4 worlds? Because the highest world, okay, is not even a world. It's called it's God. We get to the essence of God, which is the end of Ne'ilah, which is the ultimate unification with one another and unification with God. There is no being. There is no separateness at that point. And that's why in all types of temples and synagogues, everybody agrees that big Shema Yisrael, right? That we say. Because it's the ultimate declaration of there's nothing but this Godhead that Rabbi Steinsaltz mentions a little bit later. Okay, let's go on. But these big ones, what I was going to say is that Michael, we say especially because we're going up level after level after level of the spirituality, and then we're starting to get familiar with these essences of the world, and these angels have existed since the beginning of creation. I'm going on. These angels, in a sense, constitute the channels of plenty through which the divine grace rises and descends in the worlds. Okay, they are the transmitters. Okay, they are bringing in or bringing less. Now, going back to Yom Kippur, by the way, I think we mentioned this last time, but let's say it again. What is the literal, simple translation of Kippur? No, we didn't mention it. I mentioned it in a different class. I'm sorry. I was teaching a different class. What is the shoresh, the root in Hebrew of Chaf Pei Resh mean? Does anybody know?
Kaper.
Yeah, what does it mean in English?
Like when we do kapara, it's forgiveness or a means to forgiveness.
Okay. Forgiveness. That's one way of translation. What?
Village.
Excuse me?
Village, speak up.
Far. Village.
Far. Oh, interesting. Interesting. But that's a different word, but not very interesting. I never thought of that. Thank you. Wow. That's very interesting. I wonder if there's a connection.
I'm sure there's some
I think that's-
Kabbalistic connection.
Yeah, but I
Rob
don't-
Ginsburg could tell us all about it.
Okay. It's
It's
very
awesome.
interesting, but because Rashi says it. Rashi says it in Vayikra, if I remember, in not Deuteronomy, Leviticus. He mentions it in one of the Psukkah, I can't remember exactly where. Lechaper, Kippur means to wash away, to cleanse. But a real deep cleansing, okay? That's what lechaper is something, Kippur. It means to cleanse something out. Because these divine plenties, okay, this is the concept of what we're talking about when we're talking about sin in Judaism, okay? Divine plenties are always there. The only question is what's blocking it from coming into the world. Sin or missing. What does, okay, you go on and on.
Yeah.
What does chet mean? Chet, tet, aleph. It's usually explained as sin, right? But lehachti, okay, you use it in the
target.
right? It means to miss the target, right? It's because what's happening is there are these, again, going back to our plumbing. Remember the first lesson? The plumbing? What happens is when you sin, you break open a pipe. And then it's missing it's missing its connection point. So the abundance wants to come down, but it's not able. There's not an open tzinor, an open pipe to get through. So it's blocked up, and part of the thing of tshuva is to put things back together or cleanse things out so it can come down. In fact, right.
What's the connection to kfira and being a kofar?
Ooh, is that Shoshana?
Yeah.
Very good question.
Oh,
I have to
that's
think
an
about
excellent
it.
question.
I have to think about it.
I wonder if it's one of those, like, you use the opposite word because you don't want to use
Yeah,
the
like
word.
lisharesh. Sharesh means root, and lisharesh means to uproot. Same type of thing. Very good.
Pitted
Excellent.
olives.
Or maybe a good kofar really cleanses out things.
Right.
They've
Even
cleansed
better.
out. They've cleansed
Beliefs.
themselves of. They've
Yeah.
purged themselves.
faith.
But what's interesting here, Shmuel, if I go to this paragraph here, what's saying is there are certain key player angels, right?
Right.
You know, Solomon, and it's saying here that they themselves constitute the channels of plenty. Not all these like little angels that are constantly being created, but these essential angels. They themselves are almost like they're the
infrastructure.
They're the infrastructure.
They're the infrastructure that everything else builds off of. Right.
I don't know why,
Correct.
and I'm just going to put this out here, not for you to actually comment on it. Maybe let's go back to it one day. It's almost like they're the tzaddikim.
They're the foundations, like you're saying. Tzaddik Yisod Olam is at the foundation. They are the foundational
Of the-
They are like the main sewage lines of our world, or the opposite direction. They are the main lines through which we get our abundance. Yes,
Okay.
Everything else is like, then you got the hot water, then the warm water, then the fizzy water, whatever you want. But these are the main lines.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct. And they're the mainstays.
Okay.
Now, here's where we get to the interesting part. Next part. But there are also angels that are continuously being created anew in all the worlds, and especially in the world of action, where thoughts, deeds, and experiences give rise to angels of different kinds. Every mitzvah that a man does is not only an act of transformation in the material world, it is also a spiritual act, sacred in itself. And this aspect of concentrated spirituality and holiness in the mitzvah is the chief component of that which becomes an angel. In other words, the emotion, the intention, or like Uriel said, he should write intentionality,
Right.
the essential holiness of the act combine to become the essence of the mitzvah as an existence in itself, as something that has objective reality. And this separate existence of the mitzvah, by being unique and holy, creates the angel, a new spiritual reality that belongs to the world of formation. So that the act of performing a mitzvah extends beyond its effect in the material world, and by the power of the spiritual holiness within it, holiness in direct communion with all the upper worlds causes a primary and significant transformation.
Okay, so I want to ask you something. So first of all, what I find fascinating is that there's certain childhood myths that we're told when we're little that we
Yes.
outgrow and we realize they weren't true. Okay, so lahavdil, like the tooth fairy. I hope I'm not ruining that for anyone here. Okay, but then we get to
I thought you was going to say Santa Claus.
anyway, what? Okay, anyway, but the truth is that mainstay of Jewish early childhood education, which is that we're telling them that every time you do a mitzvah, every time you say, amen, you're creating an angel, a malach.
Yes.
Actually, it's like
Yes.
it's actually a fundamental truth.
Yes.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful because we really are. I mean, one of the things Rabbi Steinsaltz and the Rebbe and all the Hasidic masters talk about, don't dumb down the MS to little children. Like, give it to them straight, and one day they'll grow into it. And this is actually one of those things that's really
Right.
true. But then this is my other question. So it says every mitzvah does that, but how about the opposite of a mitzvah?
He's going to get to that in the
Okay.
last paragraph.
Okay, fine.
He's going to get to the last paragraph, and he doesn't spend a lot of time on it. Like Rabbi Steinsaltz says in his introduction to the Tanya, in his book of clarification of the Tanya, he says the Tanya spends a lot of time speaking about the hero of the story, the Benoni. He doesn't spend a lot of time talking about tzaddikim, although he spends a little bit of time because it's something beyond everybody. And he spends very, very little time talking about Rishaim, the evil people. Why? Because we all know them. He doesn't need to explain to you exactly the same reason why he's going to have 3 or 4 sentences talking about the other side of everything, which are what we call the devils or the demons that we create or the destructive angels. Yes, they're just as powerful and just as made with every action and every intention that we have and every emotion that we have. They are created, but we all know them too well. So we're not going to talk about them a lot. Let's talk about the mitzvah thing. Now, on purpose, I'm going to go to the opposite direction. This is something my wife taught me, and it's true. She taught me early in our marriage. She I guess she just opened my eyes to something, which is true, which is there's been studies upon. I'm going the opposite direction of something negative to illustrate or to highlight what he's trying to say over here in order to give it a little bit of a. It's really a mashal. It's a parable. It's not exactly what he's saying, but it gives you a certain concept and idea of what it means to create something that exists in the world, a spiritual reality that didn't exist before, and that is, for instance, in the negative sense. There are studies upon studies that show that God forbid, in a family that experiences divorce or even terrible suicide, right? There's more of a chance, statistical probability, there's going to be another suicide in that family somewhere, okay? And it's proven, and there's no connection other than one of the explanations that's made is that the minute that idea or that concept or the potential idea was revealed in the world or was made into a reality, that becomes a thing that now is a reality.
It's a viable option.
It's a viable option.
Right. Someone actually said someone crossed the, like, God forbid someone takes their own life. You know what I mean? It's all of a sudden like, oh wait, that could be whatever. That's a viable option.
So that
might not have occurred to someone else.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the same thing in the opposite direction for sure with mitzvot and doing holy and spiritual good deeds. The same type of thing. Every time we do something, we are creating options in the world or realities in the world that didn't exist before that others can tap into or to hold on to. And now something new in the world. And since everybody's so different, right? And we are so multifaceted. So even though it may look that I'm doing exactly the same mitzvah that you're doing, but remember the angels we're talking about here are being created by, what did he say? 3 things over here. He first of all said intention, he said emotion, and the essential holiness of the act. Those are 3 things. And if you put those together mathematically, with different people, how they do things and what they're thinking about and different things, then you're creating a multitude upon multitude of different types of angels that are now being created in the world. So first of all, it gives us a lot of comfort. Okay. It means that whenever people are doing something good is being created in the world. And that means it's not just the same old. That's for sure. Okay, I'm going to speak in the I. That gives me a lot of comfort because sometimes you could be like, really? So somebody gave charity. So somebody gave charity yesterday. Big deal. No, something new is being created because the way it's being done, how it's being done, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing is that this is something that Rabbi Steinsaltz did keep on saying over and over again in a very practical way, in very practical ways to people, including myself, and to people that that have worked for me or with me, is that there's no such thing in the world that goes to waste, even in the spiritual world. So if you're doing something good and you're doing something holy and sacred and you don't see the fruits of your labor, that doesn't mean that you haven't created something somewhere. There's no such thing. It's called in Hebrew. I remember we learned it in science in Hebrew, chok shimur ha'energia. It's the law of that the energy is always contained, meaning you never lose any energy in the world. It just gets expressed somewhere else.
Conservation, conservation of energy.
Thank you.
Same
Thank
thing.
you.
Thank you. Same thing with the spiritual world. There's nothing that goes to waste, and that's what he's also talking about. So anything that you do now, The other
Wait,
little,
hold on. But the thing is, when we talk about negative potentials that are actualized, but the truth is that they can be mitigated or minimized by other larger.
so let me get to my next
Okay.
sentence, which I was about to say.
Yeah. Okay. Go
The
ahead.
next thing I was about to say is that there was, I thought when you were talking about these myths or these things that are being told to little kids, I thought you were going to mention something else, which, believe it or not, I told it to Uriel and he says, I never heard of that. Okay. But I guess I was told as a kid. I was told that whenever you do a mitzvah, how much you can create, it's the angel that is being created by the mitzvah is dependent upon your intentionality and the amount of emotion you have in it. So you might be creating an angel that is kind of deformed, or kind of deformed, or missing a leg or missing an arm, right?
I've heard that.
What?
I've heard that.
Great. But then I heard it way more positively when I found this myth in, again, Rabbi Steinsaltz's book on the Tanya, his commentary on the Tanya, where he says, no, what they're really trying to say is like this. That means that every destructive angel that is created is always deformed and blemished, because there's no such thing as a Jew that can really do a sin wholeheartedly.
Oh, darn.
Now, I've been trying to prove them wrong for a very long time. And,
Yeah, joking.
I always
So it's like, when you go to the doctor and they like start asking questions, like, oh, so like, how many drinks a day do you have? I'm like, oh, none. I have like 4 beers a year. They're like, oh, do you do any recreational drugs? I'm like, no. Part of me, I get it. I'm like, oh, I'm really boring. Anyway, all right, go ahead. Yes.
So
I guess we got to try a little harder.
Right. So the thing is that this is what he's talking about here. It's true. So again, I thought my wife was talking about that thing or that saying that was told to little kids. That is exactly what he's saying here. Angels are being created by the intentionality and the content of the emotion that you're putting into that act. Okay, and now we're talking the mitzvot. So let's go to the next paragraph where he's going to elaborate a little bit upon that. More precisely, the person who performs a mitzvah, who prays or directs his mind toward the divine, in doing so creates an angel, which is a sort of reaching out on the part of man to the higher worlds. Such an angel, however, connected in its essence to the man who created it, still lives on the whole in a different dimension of being, namely in the world of formation. And it is in this world of formation that the mitzvah acquires substance. This is a process by which the specific message or offering to God that is intrinsic in the mitzvah rises upward and introduces changes in the system of the higher worlds, foremost in the world of formation. From here, in turn, they influence the worlds above them. So we see that a supreme act is performed when what is done below becomes detached from particular physical place, time, and person and becomes an angel. So the angels are your own creations. Now, he's touching upon a complicated, not complicated, but fascinating and complicated subject regarding intention or emotion within Judaism, within Jewish action and mitzvot and stuff like that, which is not a simple matter at all, because one could say there's advantages and disadvantages to both of either having great emotion when you're doing a good deed, right? And the Kabbalah describes that emotion and that intentionality that you have as the wings that exactly what he's using. The Kabbalah uses the words wings that raise up the act, and the more emotion that you had in it, the higher the worlds it can fly up and create angels that can go. An angel that can go and have get more to the source, so it can have more of an effect on the world and all the worlds. That's on the one hand of showing you how great it is, how important it is to have intentionality and emotion and stuff like that. But then there is the other side of, on the other hand, of course, there is something to say, not only something to say, but something to even say advantageous to an act that we do without emotion. without getting yourself involved in that act. There's a famous Hasidic story, again, Rabbi Steinsaltz brings it in his commentary in the Tanya. He's trying to explain exactly this issue. And he describes, he says there was once a Jew who prepared himself at great length to have the most tremendous Seder on Pesach night. And he did it with all the, what we call the kavanas, right? All the intentions, all the thoughts, all the emotions. And he went on and on, hours upon hours. Was it the first night?
It was the first night.
The first night he did it that way.
And he stayed up so late.
He stayed up so late.
And he fell asleep the next day.
He fell asleep the next
and
day.
And he woke up, all of a sudden he realized that...
And there's a second Seder.
Right, second Seder. He overslept. And he realized he only had a few minutes in order to
do the Seder correctly. He slept
in order to get it done on time. So all he did was he quickly went through the Haggadah, did chick-chock, did exactly no kavana, none of this, just like did what he was supposed to do. And then what happened? The
next day he was very distraught.
Right.
Because he felt that after all this, I wanted to have two Seders with all my being and everything, and I missed out the second Seder with just nothing. And he came to his Rebbe, and the Rebbe looked at him and said, I can't remember which Rebbe it was, I have to look it up. And he said to him, of all things, your second Seder was more precious to God.
He said that was a Seder.
That was a Seder. Why?
A Seder.
Because you weren't involved.
Right. It wasn't
it wasn't about you.
It wasn't an expression of your nurse. It wasn't just a.
It was you doing it just because God said so, and you just went through the actions. So what about the angels we're talking about then? Why do we give such credence and why do we praise and think that it's such a great thing to create these angels if we're saying that there is an inherent, Chassidut really discusses this matter at great length and said, here, there's a big problem with this idea of being emotional in a certain sense. Because the minute you say, I love you, even if I say, I love you, God, you know what the problem in that sentence is? There's a big I. But if it's somehow, especially based on what Rabbi Steinsaltz is talking about here, how do we get rid of the I? How do we ever get rid of the I so there can be complete oneness and complete intimacy with God? And it's a big problem. And here he's trying to say, so I asked this question to Uriel. I'm like, but why are we making such a big deal about intentionality and all these things if that, in a certain sense, is an impediment to going up higher? And the answer is that if you think about it, we thought about it together and we reached this conclusion. You can disagree or make remarks. Even that person who is doing it without themselves involved, they also have intention. That person also, in his second Seder, he also had intention. But his intentionality was just to get the Seder done. It's not as if he did something without any intentionality. So there was intentionality. So in a certain sense, the angel that was created is a lot more pure because it has nothing to do with him, and it can be detached from him in a certain sense. It's a lot more objective.
Intentionality meaning, an intention is the chosen course of action. Right.
So he said,
your intentionality is your mental state, like about when you're making the decision about what course of action to follow. So his second Seder is simply, I'm supposed to get this done. God wants me to get this done. That's it, because God wants it done. Right.
So the angel, it's not as if there was no angel. When is the angel not created? When does that little saying that was told to us as little kids, to Shoshana and I, as little kids, that the angel is deformed, so to speak, God forbid, or not complete or not pure? It's when you're doing something with that type of intention. There's also intention there. You might say it's not the same intention, but there is intention. It's when you're doing things and you're not even thinking about it. There's no intention at all.
When I mumble my bracha?
Exactly. Okay. When you're just doing it because it's just an act.
It just wrote.
It just wrote. It's very simple. And
when I said I'm finally from enough or long enough that I can bench without any kavana, and I was so proud.
Right. Exactly. You made it.
I'm glad
you made it.
I've arrived.
Now you can put on a black hat. When you can do that, you're allowed to put on exactly. You made it. Now you're from. Exactly.
Okay.
So I once told Rabbi Stein, Rabbi Stein and I had a very interesting relationship. But it's a Chabad custom to spit at a certain part in Aleinu. Just so you should know. I'm not going to get into the great details, but just so you should, let me put it out there, okay?
You just go.
And one time
yeah,
on Rosh
you know.
Hashanah, I came up to him and said, Rabbi, I've reached my good, I know what my good resolution is for this year. I reached my hachlatat tova, my good resolution. He said, what is it? I'm going to spit at Aleinu. And he said, Shmuel, just don't spit at me, okay? Like, the next year I came to him and I said, Rabbi, I came to a good resolution. He's like, Shmuel, what do you want from me? It's Rosh Hashanah. I'm like, I'm gonna have kavana when I spit at Aleinu. I said to him, and the concept is, so what I'm saying here is that there's just doing things out of rote, and doing things with a certain amount of intentionality, and that's what we're talking about over here with these angels that are being created, and in a certain sense, the Torah demands us to get involved. When we're talking about there's a mitzvah of love and fear of God, there are emotions that you need to have love and fear of God.
Can I say, is a deformed angel better than no angel?
So you're asking a very good question. Oh, thank you for reminding me. Because I was about to
I didn't
say,
mean to.
these
Okay.
3 categories of kavana, which I just talked about, 1, absolute emotionally involved with intentionality. 1, doing it just because I'm told to do it. And the 3rd is doing it out of rote. These 3 categories you can find in halacha. Halachic literature discusses these types of things, and there's different mitzvot, which there's certain levels of intentionality that you need to have, and if you don't have it, it's an integral part of the mitzvah. If you didn't do it, you didn't do the mitzvah. Okay? It's very interesting. And the question that the rabbis are discussing throughout halachic literature is, which level of intention are we talking about at any given time? Okay? So for instance, when they say, why do we cover our eyes with Shema? And when we say Shema Yisrael, one of the halachic reasons is in order to have more intention. Why? Because if you don't have intention when you say that first verse of Shema, not the rest, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah. And the big question is, which intention are we talking about? Intention with your whole emotional being in it? Intention that I'm in with intentionality, like I'm doing this and I'm thinking about doing it? Or is it just meaning that I'm just not doing it out of rote? You know, it's a very big question. So your question of, is a deformed angel better than a no angel at all? It depends which part we're talking about, which mitzvah we're talking about. Okay? Because there are certain things that a deformed angel, so to speak, if you created a deformed angel, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah itself, because it's part and parcel of the mitzvah. There are way more mitzvot that it's good enough.
Okay.
It's good enough.
Okay.
Okay?
There's a twist in the pipe.
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to stop here and open it up for a little bit of comments and questions. We got to the page 8. I want to do a little bit more, but we'll continue with our angels next week. Does anybody have any comments? I want to be very, cognizant of the time. We said 45 minutes. I want to be careful about that. But any questions you may have, any comments, any notes?
Are there the angels like Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael? Didn't Hashem create those?
Yes, that's what he said at the beginning. He said that in the previous page. He said on the previous page 7, on the second
In the very
paragraph,
beginning of time.
he says, among the many thousands of angels to be found in the various worlds are those that have existed from the very beginning of time, for they are an unaltering part of the eternal being and the fixed order of the universe. Those are the ones we were talking
There's a
about.
difference between those and the ones that we create.
Correct. Okay, everyone. Thank you. I hope this was fun and enjoyable.
Please, we always welcome feedback, so please send us messages letting us know anything
Good, bad.
good, bad, what you'd like to see more of.
Is the lighting good? Stop. Okay, good. Excellent.
The lighting is awesome, so thank you.
Okay.
All right, we've got lighting and sound. We're covered. All right.
Thank you so much.
Chodesh Tov, everyone.
Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov. Thank you.